Good afternoon, everyone that has joined us. My name is Tommy Marks, and today I'm representing the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council. Uh, Today's topic is AI as business infrastructure, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of our President and CEO, Ms. Sharon R. Pender, and who leads the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council. And we bring to you this webinar in conjunction with support, by the Small Business Administration. Our presenter today is from experTribe, and I'll introduce her shortly. I just want to go over a few things, a little housekeeping. If you have questions, you can put those questions in the Q&A session and in the chat. We have some upcoming events. One on September 14th, we have our annual golf tournament, which is a business networking tournament with our corporate members and our certified MBEs and any MBE that is not certified can also attend. You can go to our website at www.crmsdc.org for the details. We also have our A Day on the Hill in September, led by our president and CEO, with the other 21 presidents of the National Minority Supply Development Council, regional presidents. That's held on Capitol Hill about mid to late September. More to follow on that. And then we close out the year with our annual meeting in December, where our president gets together, pulls together our corporate members, and we do a year in review. We also have ongoing podcasts on emerging technologies where our president is interviewing key leaders from the business industry about what's happening in emerging technologies and emerging markets, covering everything from energy to IT technology to policy on MBEs and the impact of the various things that are happening in the current administration. You can find out information again on our website at www.crmsdc.org. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Agnes Kilbury, who is the owner and founder of experTribe. And today she will present the fifth webinar in a session of AI, this time as business infrastructure. We started in April. All the previous webinars associated with AI, you can find those on our website and on our YouTube channel. And you can view those in their entirety. Agnes?
Thank you, Tommy. As you explained, it's been 5 months, and through the 5 months, we've tackled one of the building blocks each session. And to bring this topic to life, we've used a fictitious company, Handbook HR, and the owner of Handbook HR is Jasmine. It's a small minority-owned business working in the DMV, and their focus is HR, but combining policy with wellness. So we started off in session 1 with an orientation of AI, followed in session 2 by AI for the work you hate. So she did a LinkedIn post and wrote an email. Fast forward to now, between then and now, we did a session around AI that talks to your clients, where she did a narrative so that her posts sounded more like her. Last time we did AI that thinks with you, introduced her 3 advisors, including the devil's advocate that talked her out of making a $50,000 mistake. And all along, we've seen how AI amplified what Jasmine does, making her more knowledgeable and efficient. Today, we're going to take everything that we learned in the previous session and build it into a system. The handout of this session is going to take you through that step by step so that you can build your own system once this is over. This 90 minutes is going to be in 3 parts. First, we're going to talk about the shape, how you structure your projects, where your files live, and more importantly, how work moves between them. Then we're going to talk about the documents that you can include in your projects or your files. And then after I show you this in a demo, we're going to recap the habits that make this stick. You're welcome to fill in your own as you go along. There's also going to be that available in the handout. And as usual, please ask questions. I believe Angel is monitoring the chat, so she'll let me know as we go if there's questions. Okay. If you remember from the previous sessions, or if you didn't attend the session, if you watch the YouTube, you'll see that I introduced a framework called Brief. And essentially, the first session was really about teaching you how to talk to AI. And then in the second session, we built a project so that the information that you kept repeating stayed static. Again, the narrative was another document that we created. And we also created a board of advisors. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the shape. And by shape, I mean projects, folders, and how they interact with each other. And we're going to use Handbook HR, which is Jasmine's business, to show you how to do this. Okay, before we dive into the demo, let's go have a look back at Jasmine. So in our last session, AI that thinks with you, Jasmine had received an RFP, and it was for Meridian to do a much larger implementation than what she was already doing. And it was Meridian that actually had advised her to apply. But what she found out was it was a different kind of work than what she enjoys doing. And also, she wasn't charging for everything that she could charge for. So she repriced. And in this example, she's doing a good job. And Meridian has sent her 2 new referrals. So her business has grown. She now has 2 more mid-sized employers and has to figure out how to integrate them into her business as it grows. So the system that we were working with before was a lot of manual copy and pasting, and it was for one client. So in order for her to be able to work now with the 3 clients and grow her business, she's going to need to increase her capacity. And as well as being more efficient with her time, she's going to need to bring someone else onto the team. And the challenge is to make sure she's able to keep the same pace and efficiency as she scales. Okay, a bit more setup before we go into the demo. In July, we had 4 projects, but each of the projects were silos. So each project had the same set of instructions. And if you wanted to get information from a chat in one project to a chat in another project, you copy and pasted what the one chat had said into the next project. There wasn't a client folder because there was only one client. And all of it was either in Jasmine's head or in chats. And so now that she's introducing someone else, there isn't a single place for that person to go to know what's happening. However, we do have the building blocks in place. Now what we need to do is connect them so that the information and the data flows easily between them. Angel, I'm hoping you'll keep me honest and let me know if any questions come up.
Yes, I got you.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you is a piece of work moving through the system. So Jasmine's largest client wants to add a 4th site, and she's going to need to decide how, if and how to do this. And what I'm calling seats are basically the different projects. So we have a seat for each of her clients, and so that's a project for each of her clients. We still have the 4 that we had last time: the numbers advisor, the market analyst, the devil's advocate, and the business assistant that does all the day-to-day stuff. And today what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to set it up so that the information moves through documents that are shared between the chats and not copy and pasting. Okay. So I am going to stop sharing briefly and I'm going to share my Google so that you can see how I've set it up. Okay. So I use Claude and Google, but this same thing could apply to ChatGPT and I believe Cowork. The first thing that you have to do is you have to connect some sort of a network drive, or in this case, I'm connected to Google Drive. In my day-to-day work, I also connect to GitHub. I know others connect to Slack. The idea is you need somewhere for your documentation to live, and you need a single source of truth for the work that you do. And so it's relatively easy to connect Google Drive. You just hit connect and it's going to ask you to sign in. And then once you're signed in, um, certain tools become available to all of the Claude chats in your projects. The thing to say is when you connect Google Drive, it connects to the whole Google Drive. You're not able to specify a specific folder. So know this when you set this up. And then you do have the ability to switch on and switch off different permissions. So for this demo, I'm making everything available, but you can also ask it to always ask you to get your approval before it does anything, or you might decide that certain things you don't want it to do. So relatively easy to set up. And then what I'm going to show you before I show you the project is I'm going to show you my Google Drive. So in my Google Drive, I have the handbook group. And in the handbook group, I have two folders. I have information that's relevant to all of my clients and all of my chats, which is information about my brand, my team, and then high-level documentation about my business. Let's see what I put in here. Nothing's in here now, but what I use my brand folder for is my logos, my color palette, things like that, how I want my presentations to look. And then information about your team would go in here. And at this point, she has one team member. Then I've set up her client folders. We have 3 clients, Meridian Health, which was her client last time. And since then, she's brought on 2 clients, Beltway Freight Partners and Northvale Senior Living. And in each of those folders, you have a working MD. This is the main communication between ChatGPT and, not ChatGPT, Claude, but the AI and the other AI chats that might want to understand what it was doing. And then in here, you've got information from the client and information about how you're going to work with that client, as well as any deliverables. You can also see in here that I have an archive folder, and I'll tell you a bit more about that as I walk you through the chats. And essentially, all of the client folders have the same structure. I'm going to pause for questions. Angel, please let me know if there's any questions. Anything I need to be aware
There
of?
are no questions at the moment.
Okay, now let's go into the projects. I have 7 projects, if I can count. The ones that you'll remember from last time, we have the HR business analyst, which was the first one that we created. And then we have the 4 advisors, the numbers advisor, the market analyst, the devil's advocate, actually 3. And then I have a project for each of my clients. They're pinned because when you pin them, you're able to easily navigate between them as you're doing your chats, which I'll show you in a bit. But what I wanted to show you was the structure within the project. So each project has the same instructions apart from some specifics about what they're doing. So for example, this is the Northvale Senior Living one. The background is going to be the same across all of the projects, but the role is going to be different. So the role is project specific. And in this case, the role is specific to Northvale Vale Senior Living. That's the account. Everything else is the same. I'm telling it where to look for information, Google Drive. I'm telling it to always tell me where it got figures and facts from. And I'm also telling it to look in the North Vale Senior Living folder to understand who the client, how the client sounds and the client specific information. And then I'm being very specific to say that information from Meridian and Beltway should not be included in anything that goes to the client. Was there a question, Angel?
Yes. The first question is, will Claude only work with Google Drive? Does it support Microsoft OneDrive?
I don't know, but I know that, okay, I don't know. How am I answering this? You can set up there's different ways to connect to Claude. There's the connectors that come out of the box, or you could build your own connectors. When I checked earlier, I could only see Google Drive and GitHub. But that's not to say that you couldn't figure out a way to make it work with SharePoint. What I will say, though, is if you're working with SharePoint, then Copilot is probably the thing you want to be using instead of Claude. Hopefully that answered your question. Let me know if there's a follow-up.
I think it answered that question. I got a thumbs up. And then the last one is MD. Does it mean markdown file?
Yes. So this is the preferred, it seems to be the preferred method for when Claude writes a file. I think it's much easier for it to digest than a Word document. Okay. The thing to make sure, and I do this in any applications that I build and whenever I'm doing client work on AI, is separating people's data. So like a hard rule, it should never put Meridian information in North Vale, Senior Living, or Beltway, or vice versa. Okay. And then in the how to work, telling it that there's two voices and it always needs to remember who it's talking to. When writing to the client, it should use the client's narrative and voice. And then when writing internally, it should use my narrative and voice. Okay. Right. So, and then there's some specifics about North Vale. And so the thing with North Vale is they don't really have a company-wide email. And so what is tailored in here is making it aware of that. So when it's proposing solutions, it's aware of some of the limitations at North Vale. It would be able to find this in the documentation as well. Okay. And then some other sort of ground rules. So basically, think about when we did the first session and we were talking about thinking about AI as someone on your team. This is you basically clarifying how you would work, and it mixes in some sort of data governance as well. And the thing to say, I'm not going to drain this. I can give you a copy if you like later on. The thing to say is you're the common denominator, right? And so as you'll see, what we're doing is we're setting up a system that Jasmine is going to have to orchestrate as she does her work. Very rarely do you just want it to go off and go rogue and do its own thing. There's a whole other line of discussion, a whole other area, which is AI agents. And for those, they go and they do stuff autonomously. But regardless of which mode you're in, you want to be very, very clear about what the boundaries are and putting the guardrails in. Okay. So where was I? Instructions. So each of these projects has instructions. I showed you North Vale's. Let me show you the numbers advisors really quickly. Same background, but in this case, it's a different role. Same thing about where to look, but the how to work has some more details that are relevant to the numbers advisor. Okay. Something to tell you very quickly about the Google Drive and some of the limitations. So Claude can create new documents, but it can't update existing ones. And so whenever you're whenever it's adding, it needs to add something to a document. It has to put the other one in an archive, which is actually good. So you'll see that the archive, and I don't know why it's doing that, the archive has versions of Working MD, and they have a date after them, but the main folder has Working MD without a version. So, and again, this is a much larger discussion, but you want to think about data governance as well, and making sure that your main folders, whether that be a client folder or the Meridian Handbook folder, the main documents are the latest version of the document so that everyone is singing off the same hymn sheet, as it were. And whenever you do an update, you add it to an archive so you can always go back and see what you did previously. Okay. Any questions before I continue?
There are no questions at the moment.
Okay, so now we're going to go and look at the demo. So in this case, Ridgely, Meridian, her biggest client, and I'll show you the request that came in. They want to extend the work that Jasmine is doing to incorporate an additional site. Okay, and that additional site has 90 people. We talk a bit about the type of people. It opened last year. So she's just wanting to go in and ask it if, do some analysis on this request that came in from Dana. So it started, and you can see what it did. It went and read the instructions, and then it went and opened the Google Drive. So it used the Google Drive integration and went in and searched the files. And then what I've instructed it to do following last time is always give me a high level description before it dives into all of the details. Okay. So in short, she's trying to figure out if she has the capacity to do this work and could she copy what she's already doing. And it's come back and said it isn't a copy, but she can reuse some of the work. Okay. And then it's highlighted some other things that she needs to be aware of. And again, I'm not going to read it. Just a summary, but essentially there is something for Jasmine to think about. And it's told her some of the constraints and limitations that she'll have if she takes on this additional site. I then had a further conversation with it, talking about when enrollment opens, reacting to some of what was said earlier. And it's given me a high-level overview of its analysis. Okay. So there's some thinking to do about the rate card, the campaign, and her capacity. And then it went on and it did some additional work. The final thing I said is I instructed it what to do. So we had some back and forth. I'm not going to go. The thing I want to show you is I asked it then to go and update the working MD file so that the next chat could do it. Okay, so where did we end? It now went into the folders, created a new working MD, and it archived the previous one. Hope that made sense. High-level summary. Jasmine, this client has asked Jasmine to take on a new site. So she's gone into her AI assistant for that client and asked what that would entail, has had some back and forth with it, and that has now changed what is going on at this client. So the working MD, which is the working document for that client, has changed, and now there's an archive of it as well. Any questions before I go on? Okay, so numbers have now changed. There was a question about the rate card. She's wondering about how much she should charge. So she goes to her numbers advisor, and I'll show you. right? So she goes to her numbers advisor with a question about Ridgely and adding the 90 staff before January, and has asked her to do some analysis. The first thing it did,
But we do
and
have one question.
okay,
It says, it gave you its own TLDR section?
yes, because in my instructions, let me see if I can show you that. I specifically told it, I said, give me the short version first and then the working version. And start every response with a 2 or 3 line summary under the heading TLDR before you do anything else. This is because last time it gave me so much information, and when I was trying to, first of all, digest it and then explain it to you, it had gone a bit crazy. And so I find that by having it tell me a brief summary at the top, it helps me digest it better. So, but this is also to show you that you can tailor how it responds to you by putting information in the project instructions. Was there another question? No question?
That answered the question. We got a thumbs up.
Oh, also something else to know. I'm on the $20 a month version, and literally I had to do this over 2 days because I kept running out. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend at least upgrading to Pro, not Pro, Max. $100 a month. I mean, if this is what you're doing with it, I think it's well worth it, or whatever ChatGPT charges. Okay, so back to the demo. So the numbers advisor has basically come back, and the highlight it's given me is I could maybe reuse Discovery, but the amount of hours that I'm logging is basically the constraint. It's not, taking on, it's not taking on Camille, but it's the fact that there is more. I'm doing more hours already than I'm able to absorb if I take this new client on. Okay, and then it's telling me the files it used to come to this conclusion. It's showing, right, the discrepancy, right? And so I have no room. I just need to think about how I can use Camille better. And then it's basically giving me a summary of I can take Ridgely. The discovery is small, right? But I might need to go check in some of my other clients as well, because it's gone and it's done some analysis of the rate card and has found something else that's going on in some of my other clients. Okay. I'm not an HR person. I just made up this scenario. So if anyone is, please bear with me. Hopefully it's though illustrating the depth of analysis that you can get if you set this up correctly. It's then giving me some numbers, some things to think about, things to think about my rate card, my retainer, as well as my capacity. Okay. Let's see what else I did. So that happened, and the next thing was I now needed to go and look at the other clients that I'm working with. Okay, so the next thing I did, and you can see because I pinned my my projects, I'm able to open them and see the chats in each of them. And so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Northvale. Actually, I meant to show you this afterwards, but this is fine. So in Northvale, I asked the same question. It went away, it did the analysis. And then the high level thing was looking at the hours and how that would map against Northvale. So the idea was understanding the busy periods at Northvale and the busy periods at Beltway to see if I could take this on or to see if I could propose a better time to do this for Meridian. Okay, so it's gone, it's done some analysis, it's looked at the files, it's actually looked at every month and what's driving the hours every month. It's told me that, the load isn't spread evenly, that there's a spike between mid-September and mid-October. a bit about expenses and things that I should be worried about in terms of taking this work on. And then it offered to run me a month by month analysis, which I did. And I spoiled my own surprise because it actually came up with this picture on its own without me asking it, but it gave me a visual of the next 4 months. It showed me the peak, and it's even made some suggestions. Maybe this is time for me to start thinking about maybe offloading some of the work to Camille, which it's done over here. And yeah, so I've got a nice visual and a better insight into how my business is running across both Meridian and North Vale. And we then, at the end of this, updated the working MD file. Okay. So next, went into Beltway and pasted this in to show you that Beltway is not aware of what's happening in the North Vale chat, but it's aware of what's happening in the North Vale Google Drive folder. Okay, so it's done the same analysis. In this case, though, the thing that's different about Beltway is it's Spanish speaking. So there needs to be some interpretation done. And, so the short answer is there is no January deadline for Beltway. So Meridian's Ridgely opens on January 5th. So there doesn't seem to be a constraint on Beltway in January. Okay. It did some additional estimation for me on how many hours and the effort that it's gonna take. And I'm not gonna drain it, but then I asked it to update the working MD file in Beltway. Okay, so if we go back to the Google Drive, that was Meridian. You should see the same thing happening in North Vale. You've got your working MD, and in your archive folder, you have the one that it updated, and you'll see the same in Beltway. So let me show you Beltway. Have my working MD, did that at 1020. And then I have the previous version of the MD file. And you notice all of my prompts are just asking it to do a specific task. All of the context that it needs for that task is coming from my Google Drive, and specifically to find out anything that's happening in progress, it goes to the working MD file of the relevant folder. Okay. So now to close this demo out, I'm going to go back to the numbers advisor. And what I'm asking my numbers advisor is to go and look across all of the accounts so that it can tell me what's going on in Q4 and whether I can fit Ridgely into Q4. Okay, same thing as before. It went and it searched through the Google Drive just like I had told it. And then it has given me its analysis. It's telling me where it got the information from, what that information is, and it's giving it to me in a format that I can easily digest. And I can also interrogate. I can also ask some additional questions, which I did here. And it's given me a headline. Okay. So the numbers advisor did what it did, and it told me, it gave me some advice at the end. And then just to make sure, I believe I went back into the devil's advocate. And essentially what the numbers were telling me is I needed to adjust my pricing because the people that were costing me the most were the ones that were harder to reach, and it didn't feel like I was charging them enough. And ultimately what the devil's advocate has said is Northwell, raising the price on North Vale and Beltway is correct. but focusing on reachability is wrong because, and if you go on to read the analysis, I'm going to be penalizing the clients that have the least money and surprising them with that at the wrong time. So it's given me a strategy in order to, figure out a better way to use my retainers and, a bit more about how I'm running my business, basically. So it's sort of agreed with the numbers person, but it's given me a bit more context and a bit more nuance. So as a business owner, as I'm making that decision, I'm taking more things into account. So that is the end of the demo portion. Are there any questions before I move back to the slides?
No questions at the moment.
Okay. So the thing I wanted that demo to show, and I hope it did, is the tool has now moved into helping Jasmine think about her business, as well as orchestrating, things like emails, pushing information between the different chats. She now has advisors that are helping her think about how to run her business more efficiently, but also how to continue to scale her business and think about her rate card and some of the other strategic decisions. So it's moved from, helping her write emails and LinkedIn posts to sort of being integrated in her business around how she actually does her business and then how she makes decisions for the business. Some things that happened that if I had just been focusing on one chat, I wouldn't have caught. My notes said one thing, but when it went and it reviewed all of the data in my folders, it caught that I had made a mistake. So I made an assumption when I asked it a question, and it caught that for me. Whereas if it only was relying on what I told it and not all of the data across my accounts, it might not have caught that mistake. I didn't have to paste anything in, as you saw. The working MD was my handoff between the different chats. I got different points of view depending on what the project was about. So Meridian was focused on Meridian, Northville and Beltway were focused on their own scenarios, and they were able to tell me what I needed to know, but from their point of view. And it was also good to be able to go back up to the numbers person who was looking across the organization. And it helped me flush out some of the assumptions I had about my Q4 capacity. Okay, and back to what I was saying before, I'm still orchestrating everything, so it's almost like I'm managing a team of AI people. And because of the way I'm doing it, I'm getting better information, and I'm able to make decisions about my business, with a better set of information, both from inside my own clients and working folders, but also, supplemented by what AI knows and what AI can pull for me from the internet. Okay, so this is just a summary again of what we did. And then now I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna quickly go through how I set all of that up. And I'm also gonna do a quick pause here just in case people have questions.
No questions at the moment.
Okay. So there's some decisions you need to make as you're setting up your system to work like this with AI. You need to understand where the different information lives, right? So you've got project instructions, you've got files, and then you've got the chats. And the way I like to think about it is the project instructions rarely change, as you saw. It's how I like to work with the chat, how I like to read information, where it needs to go find the information, who I am at a high level. And so this information is relatively static, though you need to periodically revisit it. And actually, a good way to revisit it was something we did in one of the earlier sessions, where you're able to go in and ask it to look at all of your previous chats and ask it to tell you what instructions do you keep repeating, like what things does it keep getting wrong, and you can use that to improve your project instructions so that you stop doing that in future. So you can use the chat to improve your project instructions. And then for files, it's things that change and grow with your business, right? So revenue, the amount of staff you have, the amount of hours that you're spending, and then things like your narrative and some of your strategic stuff that changes as you're pivoting. That makes sense to go in Drive. And what you need to do is always make sure that everyone is working on the latest version. So you need to set in place some sort of a governance model, like I did, where there is the work in progress, which I'm going to talk about briefly, but then there is the main document, the main source of truth. And whenever you update that source of truth, you move something into an archive. So you've always got a version of what you said before. And then that frees the chat up to be the place that you go to think about what's happening to you today, right? The RFP that just came in, the email that you need to write, the decision that you need to make, knowing that everything else is being updated so that whenever you come into a fresh chat, it's working on fresh information. The other big thing to say here is putting guardrails around how it sounds, where it gets the information, and how it communicates back to you, right? So a thing I like to do to make sure that it's not hallucinating and make sure also that it's maybe not being more flattering than it should be is always asking it to say where it got the information or how it made a certain decision. Okay. The first decision is how to structure your information. The instructions, the data that keeps changing, which ends up in like some sort of a drive, and then the roles in the instructions drive where you go to for what decision or what information. In this case, as you'll see, there was information that was specific to a client. So we created a folder per client, and then there was information across the business, but we needed different advice. And so we structured each of our advisors to give us specific information. Okay. And you're really testing to see if the place that you go to get a specific piece of information has a combination of instructions and data to give you that without too much effort on your part, right? If you're having to paste in and clarify and go back and forth a lot before you get to your answer, you might want to recalibrate either your instructions or the data that you have in your folders to make sure that the process is more efficient. Okay. And then what we saw inside every folder was the live file, the working.md. And then we saw the archive. So we saw the previous versions of working.md and the instruction, the instruction to update any file always came from me. And whenever Claude updated a file, it put the previous version in an archive. And then there was a specific folder for things that came from the client. And in each client folder, there was also a client's, the opportunity to have a client narrative and a brand voice for that client, so that when things go out to the client, they sound a certain way. And when they're internal, they sound a different way. And part of the instructions also said to be clear whether the information was for internal consumption or external consumption. So it's really building a system that lets you know with confidence that the data that is being gathered and shared is happening in the right context. And then again, emphasizing what we talked about, you're thinking in one chat and you're building in another, right? So in the client chats, I was thinking about what was going on at that specific client. and what constraints and what limitations happened, putting that in the client-specific working MD. And then when I came back to my numbers chat, we were pulling all of that information in and mapping out what was going to happen in Q4. The big thing to note is every seat, every chat, if you will, has a blind spot. The devil's advocate can't see what I said to the marketing analyst, and the marketing analyst can't see what I said to the numbers person, and neither of the clients can see each other's chats, even though the data is shared. And the only person that has the whole picture in there of what's going on in the organization is Jasmine. So in that case, it would be you. And so, view yourself as the person that's orchestrating everything. You have capable team members in each seat. Some of them can be AI and some of them can be actual team members. And it's your job to orchestrate it so that files are shared, information that needs to be shared is shared, but fully knowing that the conversations that you have are not. And so the decision on when to update a file so that other people can see it still lies with you. Okay, and Google Drive. As you saw, everything always went back to Google Drive. I had a question about SharePoint. You can also use GitHub. Essentially, you need a single source of truth. And as you'll see in my next slide, you need a way of making sure that everything that ends up in there is good to be consumed across all of your chats by everyone. The things to watch about Google Drive, so everything in there is available to be read. Claude, in this case, could not update an existing document, but it could copy everything into that document into a new document and update it and add new stuff, which is actually good because then that introduces version control and you save the previous document into an archive. But you also have to be careful that it sees the whole account. So in my case, I had other stuff in my Google Drive as well as what I was doing for this lesson, and it was coming up with random information. So I actually went in and I deleted some of the stuff that I didn't want it to see. If I was doing this for a client, I wouldn't just, I would build some additional skills and some additional limitations so that it was only seeing the handbook folder or the client folder. And I believe if you put permissions on your documents, you're able to influence this a bit more. And I think CoWork and SharePoint do this much easier. But there's other ways to build this out in addition to the connector, but I just showed you the connector. Okay. So the thing to take away from this is when you connect it to your files, it sees everything. And so the guardrails that you put in your project instructions and the knowledge that you have in your head is what prevents it from sharing the wrong information with the wrong person or updating the wrong file. We already covered this. There's only one ever one live version. So you will always want to make sure that you keep the records straight. And then what was I going to say? There is another slide I was looking for. It's going to be in my handout. Basically, before you update a document, there are some questions you need to be asking yourself. Okay, yeah, here it is. So these were the documents. I know I'm running out of time, so I need to hurry up. You've got your narrative, you've got your positioning, and you've got your clients. And the instructions that you give each of the projects is what makes their answers different, and that's what you want. So you're not getting the same thing from each of your projects. And some things for you to think about as you put this in practice. The slide I was looking for is probably going to come up later, but there is a slide in here and also in your handout that is sort of your decision as to whether to update any of the living documents or keep the information in a chat, especially as you start to bring more people on. You want to think about information that you share. Make sure you verified it. Make sure it's not confidential and can be seen across all of the chats. And then make sure that you're capturing useful information and not stale information. So I had gone into the next piece, which is the documents, and I had started to talk about those. In the examples that I gave you and in the sessions that we've been doing, there's different kinds of documentation that we've been capturing. 2 sessions ago, we talked about your narrative, who you serve, what changes for them, what you know that others don't. That was your narrative. Your positioning, what you sell, where you win, where you lose, right? And that was in there as well. And then today we introduced the idea of your clients, who they are, what they brought, and then any agreements that you had with them. The other thing I do on mine, and you'll see this in the handout, is I keep a running track of things that AI says that don't sound like me. So as well as telling it, things like don't put in M dashes and there's a few other rules in there, and you can find a lot of this online. Then there is a list that is specific to me, things I would never say, ways I want to sound, how I want my sentences to sound. And so over time, you're building your own version of, I guess, writing preferences. And so it's important for you whenever you correct something, like whenever you correct an email or whenever it did a PowerPoint presentation for you and then you did a different version, to periodically go back and ask it, what do you keep telling it not to do? And then you can add this to your instructions documentation so that it reads it and it gets better at sounding like you the more you use it. I feel like I've been talking for a while. Any questions, Angel? Is everyone still there? I hope I didn't drop off.
There are no questions at the moment, I'm sorry.
Perfect. Okay. So some things for you to think about. How is it going to know how to sound like you? Do you have a narrative document written down, or is it still in your head? What do you know about your best client that only you know, right? Think about the things that AI writes that you're constantly changing, and then where are you going to put these files so that everyone can reach them? And this is how you start to build out your own system and your own set of documentation. And it shouldn't take you too long, but essentially this is the foundation of, building your system. Okay, I'm looking at the time. We're still good. So part 3, I just wanted to quickly touch on habits. We've spent 5 months starting with your AI orientation and ending today with connecting it all together. And now you just have to start making that a habit. It doesn't take long, but the more you exercise it, the more you do this, the more likely it is to stick after you leave this session and go back to your day-to-day running your business.
We do have a question.
Yep.
So the question is, thinking through these questions, should this information live in our CRM?
In your CRM?
Yes.
Yes, if you have a CRM, and I believe that there are connectors that can connect to your CRM, then yes, it should. And I'm thinking about a small business that might not have a CRM. This would be a good way to start gathering that information. But yeah, some of the information definitely should be in a CRM, especially about your customers. But thinking about how I work, I use my CRM for prospecting and for sales, and maybe for getting to the point of signing the contract. But my day-to-day PowerPoints that I'm sharing with my clients, emails that I'm writing to them, etc., still lives very much in my emails and then in files and folders. So that's going to be different for different people. Also, depending on your size of business and how much integration you're able to do, it could very much be in your CRM. Now, the thing I'll say is when you start connecting it to your CRM, just be very careful, again, about version control, data governance, and keeping everything simple so that you're not introducing additional complexity. And the reason you don't want to do that is then you can't trust where the data is coming from. And then you're spending a lot of time, trying to untangle them. But yeah, if you've got a good CRM system that has all of this information, then definitely it would be something to integrate to. Okay. I had already talked about this earlier. Get into the habit of correcting it and then periodically asking it to look back through the chats and saying what you keep correcting, and then adding that either to the project instructions or the working MD file. In my case, the TLDR was something I did. I noticed last time when I was teaching, it gave me such a big chunk of information without any bullet points or any bold that it was too much for me to digest. And so that was a result of, me making that tweak. So yeah, get into the habit of correcting it, one, and then two, periodically asking it what you keep correcting and how you can improve the instructions so that the system is getting better for you. And the other thing to say is then also be comfortable with the fact that it's not going to be perfect when you start. So your first brief might not completely do what you want, but if you get into the habit of explaining why it's not doing what you want and then asking it to correct the brief, you're going to get to a better state eventually. This is the slide I was looking for, right? And so put some structure around when you write to the working version of your folder. So when you work to working MD, right? Did I verify the facts that I'm relying on? Is there anything sensitive in here that should not be? Does it sound like me? And am I comfortable putting my name on it? So always have these in the back of your mind. And it's easier when in your chats, you're asking it to tell you where it got your facts from and where it's getting the information from, so that you're not, what you don't want to do is garbage in, garbage out. You don't want it to just copy everything that it just told you especially if you didn't have the TLDR version and put that in the working document, because then you're just increasing the amount of unnecessary information and potentially introducing some that might not even be accurate. So always think about what you're writing back into your files that's going to be shared with everyone. Okay, the third habit is knowing when to swap your file. So at certain points, your narrative has changed. I don't know if you realize, but between this time and last time, I rebranded and I took some time to think about my narrative and what my organization does and what it stands for. And so it was a time also for me to go back and update my narrative so that, anything that I build with AI sounds like the new version of me. And sometimes you're just going to need to refresh that file instead of adding to it. The next habit you need to get into is when to add a seat. What kind of advisors do you need? What kind of advice do you need? Are you doing too much in one project? Thinking about, for example, the devil's advocate plays a very specific role, and I go to it for a specific reason, versus the numbers chat, which I just wanted to tell me honestly about the numbers, and then versus what's going on with my clients. The other thing I like to do, so as well as doing AI training, as you know, I have a product that I've developed, experTribe, which helps people find and write grants. And what my marketing analyst does periodically is just look around and let me know what my competitors are doing, what's happening in the grant landscape. For me, that means like a daily AI digest where it goes out and it looks for articles specifically about what's happening in grants and financing and nonprofits with sources. And so I'm trying not to just live in the bubble of my files and the chats that I've created, but periodically look around at what's happening externally and obviously talk to other people about it as well. Okay. So the habits are like, these are the things that are going to keep your system working. And over time, it's just going to be how you work. I'm not going to hammer it, but yeah. What you keep correcting, who reviews it before anything goes to the clients. So when you leave today, a thing to do as you continue to use AI, go back and ask it what you keep correcting. And then take some thought to think about who reviews anything before it goes to a client and what kind of review you're doing. And then also think about one thing that you'll do in the next 30 days. Okay. And then it's not so daunting because you're just thinking about one of these things. Just pick one of these things, go away and think about it. And then once you've done that, do the next thing and the next thing. The idea of this session is to demystify AI for you and help you think about how you can use it to actually amplify what you're doing. So the idea is it's not such a big lift initially. Pay the $20 a month subscription. Upgrade to the $100 a month subscription. Write your first brief, and then keep building from there. Okay, so we're coming to the end of today. What we just did, I talked to you about the shape of your AI infrastructure. So the instructions, the files, and the chats. We talked a bit about the documentation, the actual documents that go in your document folder, your narrative, your positioning, your clients, the different seats, and then the habits, right? What do you keep correcting? How do you review things before you promote them? When to swap things out when they're stale, and when to add a seat so that you're getting good information from your AI tool. Was there a question, Angel? I saw something pop up.
There is not a question at the moment.
Okay, and quickly back to Jasmine. If you've been following along, she got more efficient and she got more knowledgeable about what her business was doing and what her business was. The devil's advocate helped her to see that even though the RFP was attractive, it was taking her away from what she loved doing. And even though it was $50,000. And then the other thing she stopped doing was thinking about her business in terms of selling hours, and instead selling the value of the work she was doing. For example, being able to now start charging for discovery where she wasn't before. And ultimately, she learned how to talk to AI, right? Not necessarily prompting, but the back and forth, the iteration and the refinement, and then plug that into her Google Drive so that now she has additional team members. This is how I like to think about it, that help her focus on different aspects of her business. Okay, so the system is what makes you better at what you do. And when I think about it, it's not just about speed, but it's about the quality of work that you can deliver now that you have the numbers person focusing on numbers, the marketing person focusing on marketing. I say person, AI. AI that's specifically focusing on your client. And then one of the really important ones is the devil's advocate to just pull you out of a rabbit hole that you might have fallen into. Just wanted to put this slide in front of you as well. The thing that makes you powerful as a small business owner is the fact that the buck stops at you. That's both daunting and inspiring. So looking at this slide in January, so this information actually happened in 2025, but essentially PwC surveyed for over 4,000 chief executives across 95 countries and found that 56% of them hadn't seen significant financial benefit, and only 1 in 8 reported lower costs and higher revenue. And so when I read this, I think about the difference between having AI and embedding it in what you do. And I also think about the advantage that we then have as small and medium business owners at being able to take the knowledge and the information that we get from these tools and apply it to our business in a much shorter time frame. So I think that gives us an advantage. It enables us to be nimble, but you have to do this with the right guardrails in place so that you get the most benefit out of it. Okay. And again, you're going to get all of this in the handout that's going to be sent in the next week. We started off talking about brief and the questions and the advisor role. So that's the reference. And then today we built the other half, which is plugging it into your data and your documents so that everything becomes more efficient. You're also going to be able to find all of the recordings on crmsdc.org/media. And we'll also be sending a certificate to everyone that attended the sessions. Thank you so much for your attention. And thank you all of you that attended today and attended over the last 5 months. Thank you so much to the CRMSDC, Sharon, Tommy, Nicole, Latoya, everyone for your support and for enabling me to host this series. And also thank you to the Small Business Administration for funding it. I think I'm handing back to Tommy now.
Hey, Agnes, thanks very much for that presentation. We greatly appreciate you providing the 5 sessions. And so, folks, as we close out, just want to share again a couple of key things that we have going on. So I mentioned at the beginning, there you go, that slide there. Our golf tournament, which is next month on the 14th in Prince George's County at Woodmore. Registration is open. It's a day of fun golfing and doing business all at the same time. So, like I said, we'll have our corporate members there along with some of our certified MBEs, and it's open to the public, not just to the MBEs that are certified by Capital Region. The Day on the Hill, which is led by our president, Sharon Pender, that'll be in September. That day's still being worked out, but look out for that. And then our annual meeting in December, where do a year in review with our corporate members, and that's also open to companies, MBEs that are not certified by the council. Of course, the council certification, if you're not familiar with it, is it's actually the National Minority Supply Development Council certification, which is a nationwide certification, and there's 22 regional offices, organizations led by our 22 presidents that work with corporate America and companies that are interested in trying to do business with those corporations. August 26th, we have our final series on the cybersecurity model led by William McDowell. That will take place on the 26th of August, which is next Tuesday, if I got my dates right, or next Wednesday, excuse me. And William will close out that session, number 3 in that. And with all of our webinars we've had since April, you can find them on our YouTube channel. Or you can go to our website at www.crmsdc.org/media. And I mentioned our podcast that we'll be doing, led by our president. We're starting season 4 of the CRMSDC Hot Chat podcast. And she's interviewing, her guests include MBEs and other corporate folks that are topics ranging from energy, IT, and policy. It is www.crmsdc.org is the website. And let's see. So again, thanks to everybody that joined us. And we also want to thank, as Agnes said, the Small Business Administration, which is a provider of the grant funding that allowed us to provide these sessions.